recording.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none. Item 3, approval or amendments of the agenda. Draft motion, be it resolved that the council approve the agenda of the special meeting dated May the 4th, 2021 as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Matt and Bill. Is there any discussion or additions to the agenda? None, okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 4, business. 4.1, 2020 budget submission and presentation. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to John to give us a presentation on the budget.
Thank you, George. Hopefully what should be coming up is the first page of the budget presentation right there. It can often be the last page because it sort of encapsulates the whole budget in a bit of a nutshell. It shows our revenues, operating revenues at 2.154 million, our capital, funders portion only at 1.37 million. And then below you have the expenditures, operating 2.76 million and capital 1.377, which leaves us a shortfall of 613,568. In other words, we're spending more than we're taking in. So to make up that shortfall, we have property taxes. So our property taxes to make up that shortfall will be 613,568, which will reflect in a 3% budget or tax levy increase. Now, we have a number of slides that we'd like to go through, but first I'll do a little bit of a narrative just to explain how we got here. This budget process was vetted through the ringer a little bit with our budget committee, which was made up of our mayor, George Othmer, Councillor Gabani, myself, and our deputy clerk treasurer, Dale Taylor. So when we look at the staffing level, we are confident that the line-by-line items are reasonable forecasts. This particular slide is an Excel spreadsheet that all of our working copies, which is a binder about 3 or 4 inches thick, feed into it with all of that detail. We present tonight a council budget that includes funding to the museums and library at their historic levels. We've included $20,000 for demolition of abandoned and derelict buildings. There are no service or staff reductions. We've resolved an outstanding HR matter, and that is costed in our budget. And we've also included a reasonable increase for our firefighters. Now, we were able to do all of this while dealing with a 0% increase in our assessment base. In other words, no new tax dollars. We have not increased the water and sewer rates. So the council remuneration was adjusted for the first time in 12 years and is costed in this budget. The clerk treasurer, myself, is on an hourly rated contract and does not show in wages, but in contracts. I should add that the total costs will be lower than a full-time CEO. The 3% property tax does not completely offset the increase in fixed costs, but rather is a palatable increase given the proceeding, in my opinion. Options for council to look at, and this is a council budget. If you want to alter the 3% tax increase, there's options. You can cut or add to municipal staff or services. You can cut or add to transfers to partners. You can remove the $20,000 set aside for demolitions or increase it. Or you can take money from the 2020 operating surplus, which was a $115,000 small operating surplus for 2020, or send back the 12,000 that was back to the reserves. We did take $12,000 out of our operating surplus from last year to make up the difference. It's my opinion and recommendation against a 0% tax property increase. Aside from the obvious issue of the increases we get with fixed costs where we have no control, there's also the issue of kicking the can over to the next council. 0% tax increases happen every now and then, but normally only when there are new tax dollars, such an increase in assessments. And just to close off that bit of a narrative before we go into the sort of the details or overriding details, I must say that, you know, amazingly, COVID has had a zero negative impact on our arrears situation. Our arrears are the lowest they've been in for years. So there are a number of pages in here of the budget proposal bringing to council that I'd like to go through. I'll do at the pleasure of council. I can be stopped at any time, obviously, for comments or questions, or we can get through it. And at the end, we can always go back to the slides. So I'll leave it up to you folks on how you want to handle that. So if we can move maybe on to page 2. So this is a sort of cost reference where everything is in the regular order of things, such as utilities, general government, transportation, things of that nature. They take us all through the budget operating process. And I just wanted to put in some highlights there. You'll see on the left, hopefully, if you can say, I'm not sure if we can increase the view a little bit, but we have a number of fixed costs in there. I'm not going to go through each one. Council has had this document for close to a week now, and we've all looked at it, and I think it's an opportunity now that we can share it with the public, and they can see this firsthand. General government itself has a number of fixed costs. Our assessment services are 16 grand every year, and they keep going up a little bit. Costs us 26,000 for the audit. We've introduced pest control for our buildings this year. Our municipal insurance is $66,000. That's the current amount. It comes due next month. We're a little bit worried, which word is that there's an increase. We've built in 5%, as you can see on the notes on the right. We have a custodian, IT support, security monitoring, my admin, payroll for council, benefits. Those are all fixed costs if you were to maintain the staffing level with the municipality. We're looking, and we have approval just as of today for an intern. Some cost to us, most of it to the federal government, in the hopes that we can bring somebody along and show them the ropes in the municipal administration. And we've updated our security system significantly with new cameras panning our downtown out in front of the municipal office, security at our water plants and water tower that wasn't up to snuff. So we've brought that up to current standards and viewable for the most part. On revenue side, on the general government, we're taking 12,000 from our operating surplus. We have a lease in place now at the pharmacy, so that's straightened out. We have the Fraser 8 units, trailer parks. Some funding left over from cannabis, even though there isn't a cannabis store in Cobalt. There is some funding. We've got a little bit of funding from Enbridge. They're doing some line work down by the garage. And user fees and licenses and rentals for $9,000. Next page. There's a few pages on this. Our big funding, OMPF, $899,000. That amount comes to the municipalities way back when they downloaded a number of services to municipalities, such as police and ambulance and all those great services. And so in lieu of that, and to make it cost neutral to the municipalities, they come up with a operating fund. And for Cobalt, it's $899, same as last year. Doesn't cover everything that was downloaded, but it does come fairly close. Transportations, there's where you see our transit costs that we pay into. We've have a loan for a new half-ton truck and a new loader. Our Lang Street bridge update, upgrade, if you remember back then, well, that last payment is this month. There's our payroll benefits, vehicle fuel and licenses. We have other expenses in there. The big one, of course, is the garage. And hopefully everything goes through. We get this garage built and financed, and the payment this year will be $22,000 to finance that. We have a legal requirement to inspect the Lang Street Bridge. It's a little bit overdue, I'm afraid. And so we put that in place for this year. Through some tire and rims on our vehicles. Our overtime expenses we're projecting are significantly less than last year because we do not have the issues at the water plant that we did last year. And we've had to repair the roof, a new roof on the works garage. So under transportation, normally do not get all that much money, but we did recently sell our scrap. We charge out street lights to places like the trailer park that do not get property tax billings and other properties. We move to health and social services, big costs. We pay the Temiskaming Health Unit for $53,000 a year. We depend on them to inform our residents about things like COVID and everything, and they're the authority having jurisdiction there, and that's what costs us $53,000. DSAB is a big one, $201,000, a little bit decrease from last year. We pay in for physician recruitment, which actually offsets some of the costs for new doctors coming in and out and things of that nature, and trying to upstaff doctors in the area, especially specialists like internists and such as that. A little bit of expenses on the cemetery. And carry on. So revenue, we get quite a bit of money from the province for COVID funding. A lot of things that we've done, upgrading some of the items that we've had to work through because we don't have our office open to the public. We get some money for our cemetery from Coleman. Recreation and culture, we're budgeting the same amount to go to the library, the same amount to the mining museum, the same amount to the classic theater. When I say same historic levels, they were cut significantly last year. And I think they all felt that impact. We're putting a little bit of money into Tech Park, and we've applied for grants to put a fair amount of money into the Tech Park. We have a couple of students. We have some signage that we're trying to take care of. There's some arrears that were never paid that we're had to catch up with. On the revenue side, we've got the Canada Day grant. It's small. Every year it gets smaller. Planning, right now in operating, we don't have much in planning. We do have some in capital with the official plan. Protection of persons and property is a biggie, OPP, $389,000, an increase of $11,000 last year. And that's one of those areas, the fixed costs that go up that we have no real control over, but it's real money. Our dispatch costs us $8,000 a year. Our crossing guard is $8,000. A lot of people think the school pays for the crossing guard, and it doesn't. The municipality pays for that. Our bylaw enforcement is first year where we're full costing and full benefit from our bylaw officer. Our animal control officer costs us $14,000. Our building inspector costs us $2,000, but all building fees go to the corporation to offset their costs. Our fire chief and our firefighters have been increased a little bit. the fire chief to his final step, and our firefighters at 2% increase for them. Next. And last on the cost comparative. Property standards, this is where we have $20,000. We've actually put it into the budget where we want to make sure some of these buildings are cleaned up, especially the ones that you can get access to because they are posing issues for us and the OPP. The OPP, of course, is offset by charges on the tax bill. We do get some money for provincial offenses. Believe it or not, people are fined in the area. And there's a disbursement formula that goes through that everybody, all the municipalities, and of which I think there are 23, are involved. And Councillor Matthew Johnson is on that committee. And that's it for there. And environmental, big one again. Our recycle garbage collection, $92,000. Our landfill services go up all the time, 70,000. That's an increase of 13,000 this year because of new covering and new closeout issues that have to be funded ahead of time. And that's through the City of Timiskaming Shores. As you know, we don't have a dump. The services provided to the municipality, area municipalities for recycling is a cost. And we have a hybrid water system in so much as the Ontario Clean Water Agency, we pay them $123,000 a year. And they provide the ORO services. In other words, the liability legal oversight of our system and work with our chaps on the Public Works Committee, that our Public Works Department, that are licensed to work with water through a number of annual upgrades to their ticket system. So on environmental, our water sewer charges are significant. They, as I say, they have not gone up this year, and they do offset our system. We have a new contract after 4 years being without one with Township of Coleman that details specifically how the water going to Coleman is costed, and they pay the municipality for that cost at $25,000 a year. Even though the trailer park pays a very low rent and no taxes, they do pay the charges for things like water, sewer, garbage, OPP, streetlights, and things of that nature. Waste Diversion Ontario still provides municipalities with grants for the recycling portion. So you'll see that the grant for recycling down at 30,000 offsets the cost above at 30,000. And I think that's it for that particular comparison. This one is a little bit hard to see, and that's the issue with going Zoom, I guess. But we'll do our best, everyone, to get through it. And it's the sort of the big picture item where all of our operating revenues are placed in a format that the auditor has and produces our financial information return. So we have our operating revenues detailed specifically, and operating expenditures. Revenues come first and then the expenditures. So you can see that the totals there. It's always a little bit of a difficult one. The intent is that it shows the breakdown between general government, transportation, health and social services, recreation and culture, planning. It goes on, and I don't know if we were able to get the full width of it because there are a few more. Yeah, a little bit difficult. That's okay. We can always come back to it if there are questions on this particular item. So if we move on to page 7. Just one more little scroll down. We seem to be locked on the most difficult budget page. Just bear with us for a little minute.
Is this supposed to say 2021 draft capital budget on the top left corner?
I'm sorry. Maybe that's what I'm missing. My fault, John. Now this is the capital budget that went to council last week, or a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks back, where we detailed our capital budget. We are showing a total cost of 1.377 in capital works. We're showing a cost coming out of the taxpayer's pocket of 8,500, which is significantly less than last year. I think last year it might have been around 58,000. We're hoping that there are a number of grants by the province and the federal government in the COVID times. We want to take advantage of every penny of those grants. So we have determined and working on, and what a little hopeful in some areas, but our expectation is that we can finance the capital expenditures through grants from federal and provincial, other than the cost of the garage, which has a loan repayment that goes back to Infrastructure Ontario that we're still working on to get the loan. But that repayment amount, we're trusting that we can find a funding source to help us with that repayment amount, so that at the end of the day, we're only looking to the taxpayer of 8,500. Sorry, John, if you can proceed then. So at a 3% increase in property taxes, we have a Impact, which is our assessment folk, provide us with a document or a formula system on when we go and set our tax rates. So that once council approves a property tax increase, let's say 3% is what the committee is recommending, we run those totals. So when we run the totals for a 3% property tax increase, we're showing an average increase to the average ratepayer of $25. Now, I'll explain a little later as we go through it that again, of course, if your assessment is larger than the average, then you pay a larger amount. So I think I'll explain later that somebody with a $122,000 assessment for a very nice house in Cobalt would have an increase in and around $48. There are a couple of properties that are increased to $142, and they're in a different property class than residential. Okay. So in closing that part of it, the draft financial information return, everything is finalized except just the way financial information returns work. We have to wait for the audited statement coming from the company that has the power up on the hill. So that we just wait for, doesn't impact this particular statement. You'll see at the bottom that we do carry an operational surplus of 115,000, which is not bad on a budget the size of ours, $3 million budget. Not as much as last year. There was more opportunities, funding opportunities last year. So of that 115, we want to take in this budget process $12,000, and we want to send the rest back to operating reserves to keep us in a good financial stead. The only impact we have on an operational deficit is the amount dealing with the solar project on the hill, and that deficit would only be realized if the solar farm went under. And even then, we're not too sure, but because the auditors are careful with everything, they've built in a deficit projection. But otherwise, we're in a reasonable, not great shape with the surplus, but in a reasonable shape with surplus. And we are not in, other than that situation, a deficit, no deficit. So that is my presentation, and I really appreciate everyone giving me an opportunity to go through this, and certainly I'm willing to have my feet put to the fire if that's the case, and if there are any questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions of John? Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. John, I notice under Recreation and Culture, where we are funding varieties of the library, mining museum, classic theater, tech park, those sorts of things. And I note the bunker this year has found alternate financing, so they're not included anymore. But I'm wondering about the classic theater. We're marked them down for 10,000, but I'm wondering if the classic theater is in fact in need of that municipal grant this year. My impression from the statements they submitted to us was that they have sufficient funds on hand to weather the pandemic storm. And I'm wondering if we could hang on to that. If they do need it, they could certainly reapply to us. But I'm not sure I see this in the situation we're in, and looking at a 3% tax hike. I think I would rather see those monies stay with us if they're not needed at the theater. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, I can say that the theater has asked for their traditional funding. They've asked for it, and you know, the decision is in sort of in the opinion of the grantor. The council has full discretion. I've reviewed the statements also and see that they have the ability to ride this out unless there are costs that we're not aware of. You know, certainly throughout the year, the council can go back to them and say, you know, we want to take a look at at your needs right now, because we're looking at your financial return and it's showing that you have that money. Now, obviously, they're a business and they have a traditional source of funding, being the municipality. The municipality tried to go down the route with the legacy to have the legacy fund offset the need for the municipality to provide such donations. So it's certainly up to the purview of council as to whether they want to deal with that at this moment and to remove it from here so that either it impacts the taxes or that amount can be put to another area where you see another need. And in my opinion, another need would be the bumping up the 20,000 for the derelict buildings, because I know we have an ability to do more work than $20,000. So I'll leave it at that. And everything you said, Councillor Wilcox, is correct. It looks like they have the funding. They have requested funding, and it looks like they have it. For the budget purposes, we just reestablished the historic level and have given it to council to review.
Thank you.
Pat?
On the theater finances, the one thing that does strike me is that we are hopefully coming to the end of this COVID mess, and the theater will sometime in 2020 hopefully be able to reopen. Now, when the theater reopens and starts to bring in acts, there is a great deal of money needed to start up again to pay those acts, all the bills and expenses that come before the ticket money ever comes in. So I'm thinking that a good part of what they have, you know, in reserve is going to be needed for the startup again.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pat. Angela, you had something to add?
Yeah, I'm with Councillor Wilcox on this. I've reviewed their financials and I believe they can weather this year. It's only going to be a part year. Last year, they were not open at all. And I'm not comfortable with a 3% increase because a large portion of our population are retirees on fixed income. And unfortunately, those pensions didn't go up 3%. I get no zero increase, but I'd like to see a little bit lower of a tax increase. Otherwise, we are going to tax our seniors out of this town. And then what are we going to be left with? Because that's going to affect our tax base going forward. I don't dispute that Public Works needs a shop, but that's a pretty hefty price tag after this year. That's $68,400. That's going to hit the budget after this year. And that's something we need to keep in mind as well. I thought our school of thought was we were going to build a reserve for this to make the financial impact a little less, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I've gone over it. I don't know where else we can cut. Our operating costs are our operating costs. I think those are more fixed than our capital. That's kind of our wishes and dreams.
Okay, thank you very much. Joe?
I agree with Councillor Wilcox and somewhat with Councillor Angela. We do need that Town Works building. There's actually an MOL, if I'm not mistaken, saying that the building is unsafe for our workers. We have to make a procedure for them to go in to work. That means we need this building. So.
Go ahead, Joe, you finish? Okay, Matthew?
Through you, Your Worship, I'm in agreement with Councillor Adshead with regards to the theatre. The theatre looks pretty solvent to me. And at this time, the $10,000 coming out of our coffers, especially when we're speaking about a 3% tax increase, I think it would be better suited either back into our coffers or, as CAO John has stated, being put to the derelict buildings that we need to remove from town. I think that would be a better use of that money currently, especially seeing as the theater is not operating at the present time and they do have a decent amount of reserve there to fall back on. I'd also like to touch on DSAB. In the local newspaper, it was brought to light that they seem to have some bookkeeping concerns. And I would hope as a municipality, we'll be looking into that as well. I believe the municipality of Englehart had some issues, and I think that would be something that we need to take a good look at as it's already been found in our neighboring municipalities. I don't want to take away from social services at all. I just want to make sure that the municipality of Cobalt is paying their fair share and not being overcharged, as has been recognized again in the township of Englehart. And other than that, as Councillor Adshead has stated, we have fixed costs in place. They're not really going to be moving. The Public Works shop is essential. I walked through there a year ago, and at that time, I would hazard to say it was unsafe to work in. And if we have to develop a special procedure for our staff to work within that environment, that is a pretty clear indicator that we need to move on a Public Works shop. With that being said, let's look at multiple design options to ensure that we're not overpaying for something, and look at multiple options for, you know, various types of structures, and obviously do our diligence before we start putting out an $800,000 expense. Regardless of whether it's funded or not, it will be a $68,000 line item in upcoming budgets, and we need to be cognizant of that. Other than that, I like how the budget has been put together. And as long as we can address those issues and those concerns, I believe we do have a pretty good budget that we're looking at here. Thank you. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Johnson. I agree with the shop too. The shop has been on everybody's books in the last several years, and everybody seems to be passing the buck on it. It's time we have to go to it, because someone is going to get definitely hurt in that building if we don't do something soon. Hey, is there any other comments? Bill, did you have your hand up a second ago?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. My only comment is I agree with the $10,000. If we can take it out of the Classic Theatre, if they can survive, that's fine. And I agree with Councillor Johnson and our CEO that an extra $10,000 going toward the removal of the derelict buildings is only a plus for us, because then what happens is that we have an extra property that could be sold to a potential home buyer or somebody who wants to build a home. I see that's a positive thing for us. I do agree that the garage has to be torn down, and we need a new garage for our workers there. It's in pretty rough shape. And I'd like to pass on my regards to John and the people who put this together. I think the first page sort of encompasses everything. It's well summarized and made a lot easier for me to go through things. So good job there. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks a lot. Go ahead, Councillor Angela.
Okay, I'd just like to point out that if we take the 10,000 from the Classic Theatre and we put it into demolition of derelict buildings, that still leaves us in a 3% tax increase position. Just saying.
That's good. So what's council's desire? You want to back that $10,000 out and put it up against the whole works, or what? Go ahead, Doug, and then Bill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up on my fellow councillors' comments, I agree wholeheartedly with replacing the garage down there for the Public Works Group. That thing's been questioned for the 30 years that I know of, and I think it's great to see us actually doing something about that. I'm really, really happy with that decision. With respect to the $10,000, and I understand Angela's point very much, being a senior citizen, but I also look at $25 a year. Gosh, that's just about $3 and a few cents a month. And I think I can handle that. I hope a lot of the other seniors can as well. But I do think investing in our town, particularly with regard to revamping, redoing properties so that they can be sold and something more successful put in place, is a very positive direction for the town to move in. So I'm going to favor that direction.
Thank you, Doug. Bill?
No, I just, through you, Your Worship, I think the $10,000 should go to the removal of the derelict buildings. I don't see a 3% is okay by me. I'm a senior. I think I can handle that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more comments to be made on this then? Go ahead, Matt. Matt and then Pat.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. And not to sound overly repetitive, but I think the 10,000 towards the derelict buildings not only gives us lots that we can build on, but it also removes significant public safety hazards. And I think we really need to pay attention to this. Some of these buildings are a good windstorm away from being blown over. They're attracting wildlife. They're attracting all sorts of other issues as well that we do not want in our town. And if it's making it difficult for our town or the residents of our town with regards to public safety, or our police officers with regards to their safety, I believe that that should take priority at this time.
Thank you, Matt. Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, okay. Yes, I think that $10,000 should definitely go towards the derelict buildings. And we definitely have to have New Works garage down there. And as another senior taxpayer on this council, the little bit extra a year is just fine by me. We all expect little extras, and that's a lot less than what our grocery prices have gone up. So it's not a problem.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, definitely the money go to derelict buildings. I'm all for that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay, not that I disagree with anybody's comments. I wholly agree with a lot of them. And no, it's not a big increase this year. but it's going to be a bigger impact next year, which is going to mean another increase next year and maybe even a bigger one. I just want to put that out there so that it's in everybody's head. Also, this brings to light that we really have to diversify our tax base a little bit. So I would like to see, after we put the budget to rest, that we start getting some strategic planning meetings started on what we can do to attract residents and businesses to Cobalt, to build our tax base a little bit. So we're not relying mainly on the people that are going to find it a struggle in another 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Anytime you want to have a meeting, let me know. I'm available. More comments on the, Pat, you got another comment you'd like to make? Your hand is still up. You're muted, Pat. Okay, thank you. Anything else anybody would like to add? Okay, having said that, John, would you like to say a little something here before we carry on?
Not overly, except just to address the issue that Councillor Adsett raised about a future meeting. The official plan review that is in the budget that will now be approved, that is part of the main goal of an official plan review, is to go to the public, seek public input on where you want to see the town of Cobalt. So I think by putting that, taking the steps to put the official plan review in place, and it's at least 15 to 20 years out of date, is a big step towards what everyone just mentioned about, you know, better strategies for where Cobalt should be going in the future. And that's what an official plan review is all about. Now,
okay.
Sorry, just the last thing, the resolution would be as amended, strictly as amended, and we will make the change administratively in the line items between the theater and the derelict buildings.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Okay, we can move on, I guess, to the choices. There's actually 3 choices, as John said. Council to determine whether to accept and adopt the budget summary. I call that choice number 1. Accept and amend the budget summary. I'll call that number 2. Defer final approval to the next regular council meeting. So be it resolved that council accept and amend the budget summary. Can we get a mover and a seconder? Doug and Joe. All in favor? Okay, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of staff, the Works Department guys, the girls in the office up here, John, Bill, for having helped out with this process. It's been a lengthy one, but it's been a good one, and we're not in that bad a shape financially, I don't think. So we're going to be moving ahead, guaranteed. Okay, no closed session, no business arising from a closed session. Confirmation bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-18, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the town of Cobalt, be taken as read a first, a second, a third time, and finally passed this 4th day of May 2021. And further, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and recorded in the bylaw book. Mover and a seconder, please. Bill and Pat. All in favor? Carried. Is there a lag in my voice when I'm speaking? Is it? Seems that while, okay. Okay, item 8, adjournment. Be it resolved that the special meeting of council be adjourned at 7:15 p.m. All in mover and seconder? Doug, and Matt. All in favor? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a big job and it's well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, John. Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
John S., you're going to stop the recording?